9 members of a Michigan-based Christian militia group have been charged in connection with an alleged plot to spark a war against the federal government. On Monday, the Justice Department said the group, known as the Hootery, planned on killing a law enforcement officer and then bombing the funeral procession. According to the indictment, Hootery members hoped the funeral attack would weaken law enforcement morale ahead of a full-scale uprising against the government. 8 members of the group were arrested over the weekend in raids in Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana. The 9th suspect was arrested Monday. A witness to an FBI raid in Indiana said he saw law enforcement officers seize a cache of weapons.
Oh, they were full tactical gear. They had the shields, helmets, bulletproof vests, assault rifles, everything, the whole 9 yards, just like you see on TV.
Prosecutors say Hootery members have trained in weaponry and bomb-making since at least 2008. Video posted on YouTube shows armed Hootery members conducting military-like training exercises. The individuals in the videos are dressed in full combat gear and carry weapons. In one video, they burn the flag of the United Nations before hoisting their own flag in its place. Part of the group's website reads, quote, "Jesus wanted us to be ready to defend ourselves using the sword."
Well, earlier this month, the Southern Poverty Law Center released a report called Rage on the Right, the Year in Hate and Extremism. It tracks a major rise in domestic right-wing extremist groups in the United States. According to the report, the number of right-wing militias tripled last year to 127. 2 chapters of the Hootery militia, one in Michigan, the other in Utah, were included on the list. Mark Potok is director of the Intelligence Project at the Southern Poverty Law Center in Montgomery, Alabama, and that's where he joins us. Welcome to Democracy Now!, Mark. What do you know about this group?
Well, thanks for having me. You know, frankly, we knew very little. We spotted them early in 2009. They seemed to be a very small group, 2 very small chapters. And what was remarkable about the group was their very particular kind of Christian millennial spin on what are really very common theories in the militia movement. I mean, basically, virtually all militias, the secular militias, have an idea about what is going on out there and the nefarious role that the federal government is playing. What they basically believe is that the government is planning to impose martial law, herd Americans who resist into concentration camps, and ultimately the government will be subsumed in some kind of new world order, a sort of socialist hell is the way it is imagined. You know, this particular group had this very strange spin on the whole theory in which the enemy was not so much a secular new world order as the Antichrist. And they identify the Antichrist very closely with the UN, and in particular with Javier Solana. So they're very similar to the other militias we've seen come roaring back in the last year or so, although they have this very particular twist.
And Mark Potok, has your group been following the Hootery for a while? Tell us when you first found out about them.
Well, we first spotted them in early 2009. And really, they didn't look a whole lot different from many other militias we track. They were very paramilitary in their orientation. As you said in your introduction, they had a great many videos showing pretty remarkable combat operations or combat training. You know, this wasn't merely people shooting at targets. It was people carrying out field exercises, using smoke bombs, and so on. So, you know, it looked rather similar to real military training. But, you know, that is true of a great many of the militias, so, you know, there wasn't any particular indication that these people in particular were ready to go operational.
And why are they based, and the information you have on the raids in Ohio, Indiana, Michigan?
I'm sorry, why are they based in those states?
Is there a particular reason in those states, and what the FBI, how the FBI found out information about them?
No, I mean, I don't think there's any particular meaning that they're in those states. I will say that Michigan has been quite a hotbed for the militias. Of course, I'm sure many people remember that Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols, the Oklahoma City bombers, had contacts with militias in Michigan. So that is, you know, a state where this movement has been roiling and boiling all the way since the 1990s, and it's a state where we're seeing a great deal of activity again now. I think that the federal agents somehow got wind of something going with these guys, and it's pretty clear from reading the indictment and some of the supporting affidavits that they had someone in that group, some kind of confidential informant, going back to 2008.
And Mark Potok, let's take this back a little bit before this, the DOJ made this announcement this week regarding the Houthi militia. There have been a number of incidents over the previous weeks, and lawmakers are continuing to receive threats in the wake of the health care vote. New York Democratic Congressman Anthony Weiner was forced to close an office in Queens Thursday after his staff received a threatening letter with a suspicious white powder. The letter directly referred to Weiner's support for health care reform. At least 10 House Democrats have reported death threats or incidents of harassment since last week. As Congress was preparing to vote for the health care reconciliation package last week, Republican Congressman Steve King of Iowa addressed a group of Tea Partiers and urged opponents of health care reform to beat the other side to a pulp.
I've got to go back up and vote again against the reconciliation package, but I wanted to come down here in this little window about 12 minutes so I could say to you, God bless you. Awesome American people. Thank you. And I am overwhelmed with gratitude at the power of who you are and what you're willing to do. And if I could start a country with a bunch of people, they'd be the folks that have been here standing with us the last 2 days. Let's hope we don't have to do that. Let's beat that other side to a pulp. Let's take them out. Let's chase them down. There's going to be a reckoning.
That was Steve King addressing Tea Party gathering. Mark Potok, your response.
Well, one thing I can say is that Steve King has played a really nasty role for a number of years now. I mean, this is only the latest from him. Steve King has spent a great deal of energy defaming undocumented immigrants. He has made a claim for many years now that undocumented immigrants in this country murder 12 Americans every day, and drunken illegal aliens, as he would say, run over and kill another 13 Americans every day. You know, we actually looked into this claim, and it's utterly false. It's not even remotely close to the truth. You know, so he is one of the people who I would argue are out there, people in the ostensible mainstream, who have absolutely been heating up the situation, who have been pouring all kinds of vitriol on conspiracy theories and so on into the public square. So I think what we're seeing is a reflection of that. I really do feel that public figures and certain commentators have helped to heat up the whole situation. You know, and in some ways, the culmination of that was exactly what we were talking about just earlier with what's happened to many congressmen. It's probably worth noting also that the many bricks thrown through congressmen's windows around the country in the last week or so were apparently inspired by a call from a particular Alabama militia figure, a guy named Mike Vanderboe, who wrote 2 Fridays ago on his blog a long screed: break their windows, break them now, break them again, and on like that. So we're seeing you know, all kinds of factors come together that are helping to drive this real rapid expansion of the right, this real rage on the right.
And then Congressmember Louise Slaughter of New York was one of at least 4 cases of vandalism targeting Democratic offices across the country late last week. She stopped by her office in Niagara Falls to see the damage caused by the vandalism last week.
When I go out on the floor of the House and I'm going to do something, I think about you. I think about the calls that we've had, awful things that have happened to you in health care, worried about your jobs, and we're all in this together. We all belong together in what we're trying to do. And it is such a wonderful thing to be American. And we have got to, if we're going back 40 years, and I hope to heaven we are not, in the way we treat each other, we have got to stamp that out right now.
Oh, yeah. Right.
I could not believe
That's great.
Last Sunday, probably one of the most beautiful days the Lord has made, was really destroyed for all of us by the actions that took place on the Capitol grounds. In the first place, it's the only time I've ever known them, John. They came right up to the Capitol. Usually there was sort of a distance there. And some of my colleagues went out on the balcony, looking a great deal like Mussolini, if you remember, those of us who are of a certain age, egging them on with megaphones, holding up signs saying kill. Some of my African-American colleagues, the great icon of civil rights, John Lewis, was harassed by people with very petty and small-minded. What I saw coming out that day was not even concerned particularly about health care. I know what it was. I've seen it before.